This afternoon I'm going to be talking to you about public transportation and how it affects us all. According to M. Bello, USA Today, June 20th, 2009, the number of people riding buses and trains hit a 52-year high. This suggests to me that the time to look at public transportation options is now. First, I'll give you some information on public transportation. Then I'll tell you why public transportation is good for the environment. Lastly, how public transportation affects the country and directly affects us. First, I'll start with information on public transportation. Europe has a long-standing tradition of extensive, efficient public transportation. Cities have a mix of subways, trams, trolleys, and buses, and interurban trains. Public transportation continues to be a very attractive alternative to the automobile in Europe. According to Jay Ewing, August 4, 2008, Business Week, this is in response to many decades of high energy costs in automobile ownership. He also notes that the cost of gas in Frankfurt, where he lives, is $9 per gallon, which is an average cost in Europe. At that cost, Americans would get a sudden and very rude wake-up call and not only demand, but want public transportation. In comparison, the United States promotes cars as its principal mode of transportation. LA is a prime example of this attitude. In the essay, Automobile Age in America, republished in the text, California Dreams and Reality, 2005, J.J. Flint discusses LA as a city built on transport, referring to the Pacific Electric, which at the time blanketed the LA basin with over 1,100 miles of track. At this point, most of that track has been covered up by what are now highways. As you can see, many of the highways cover the same area that the tracks once covered. There are a few cities in the United States, such as New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, and San Francisco, that kept their public transportations and acknowledged the fact that these systems were very important to them and their inhabitants. Today we are faced with problems that are becoming more and more evident with our lack of public transportation. One of those problems is traffic, and how do we manage it? One solution is public transportation. Developing public transportation options allow us to be mobile without being confined to one option. The car, being the preferred choice of transportation, has become inefficient, especially in crowded metropolitan areas and corridors. One solution, building public transportation is convenient, but it has to be convenient, offer frequent service and more destinations, so that it could attract more riders away from their cars. H. Howard of Maryville, Tennessee, wrote in Christian Science Monitor, June 9, 2008, that he would take public transportation, but he lives and works in an area that offers no public transportation alternative. He, like many in the United States, are faced with this option. Also of importance, public transportation should allow for ease of transit between combinations of public transportation modes, including the car. Public transportation is of vital importance in the event of a natural or man-made disaster. We in California are aware that a natural disaster, like an earthquake, is a very inevitable option. Having public transportation could mean the difference between life and death for us, our families, our neighbors. Now let's look at why public transportation is good for the environment. Public transportation would help in the reduction of CO2 emissions into our atmosphere. Public transportation accounts for a small amount of greenhouse emissions of gases. There is now worldwide agreement that greenhouse gases must be decreased. W. Reese wrote in an article for Scientific America, Earth 3.0, in March 2009, if we have any chance of avoiding a catastrophic means increase in the global temperature, the worldwide economy must be largely decarbonized by 2050. Not very far away. Environmental pollution also contributes to higher health costs and concerns. In recent times, there has been talk and research linking the impact of smog and urban pollution to the health of the public. Prevention printed an article by J. Kestner, March 2008. Kestner wrote that getting to work was the biggest weekday health risk facing commuters in car-centric cities, topped only by smoking. Public transportation uses finite natural resources more efficiently and wisely. It moves a greater amount of people at a lesser cost. And finally, how does public transportation affect the country, and more specifically us? Public transportation would lessen the U.S. dependency on foreign countries. An example of this can be found in the 1970s, when a fuel shortage was created because the OPEC nations of the world decided to flex their power and show us that their control of the world's fuel sources could affect our daily lives. Public transportation options offer us freedoms to choose transportation needs according to time, cost, and lifestyle. Public transportation reduces traffic, making commuting time for those of us who choose not to use public transportation much more efficient, pleasant, and faster. Public transportation also increases jobs, which is good for our economy and for the communities that public transportation services. In conclusion, the information is clear. Other countries around the world are expanding and developing their public transportation systems. Global warming is occurring at a faster rate than anticipated. We are faced with an ever-increasing population that is increasingly mobile. Fuel resources that are currently available and are finite are hurting our environment and our health. Public transportation creates jobs and is good for the economy. The time to develop public transportation choices is now. Can we afford to business as usual when it comes to public transportation? The countdown has already begun. It will happen with us or without. Thank you.